This is Fred Beck from Fred Beck Cycling, proudly sponsored by Empire 5 Stars. Today I'm joined over Zoom by Blake Harrison. Blake, it's nice to have you on the Zoom. How are you?
Very good, thank you, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good over here in Norfolk, up for the weekend. But what else have you been up to then, Blake? What have you been doing?
Well, I was at the I had a great day. What day is it today? God, a great day on Sunday because it was my son's birthday party. So the morning was all feral children and bouncy castles and cake. And then before the cleanup started, I had to go to the Olivier Awards because my play I did last year was nominated for an Olivier Award. So I got to get suited and booted and go to the Olivier Awards. But better than that, as I got to miss all the cleanup of the party. So I got to do cake, bouncy castles, and then go before the cleanup started. So that was perfect.
You killed two birds with one stone, basically. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I saw on your Instagram story. That's when you in suit on that red carpet of loads of other people. That was the awards.
Yes, yeah. So it was pretty good. We didn't win, which was that was a shame, but we still had a really great time. And it's a big cliche to say, oh, it's just an honor to be nominated, but in a way it kind of is, especially for that play. We were the first play on at the Park Theatre post lockdown, and day one was us being taught how to phlegm in a cup for COVID protocols. So then we had to all go, we'd met everyone on the first day and then had to go to a corner of the room and we're like hocking up phlegm and spitting it into a cup so that they could then go and test it twice weekly for COVID protocols. And I don't think anyone, whilst they were phlegming in a cup, thought we'd end up at the Olivier Awards, like the premier awards for British theatre. So it was quite an amazing achievement, really.
There's quite a ton of events doing that sort of thing, then ending up at the awards. But why could you just not do a normal COVID test? Why did you just do that cup thing?
I have no idea, mate. I think they said that it was that with the swab that goes up the nose and in the mouth, you're not getting I suppose it's kind of like that they want it to come from deeper. They get a better test result if it comes from deeper. So if you are like getting phlegm up out of your chest and bringing that up and putting that there, it's deeper and they can do a more accurate test. That was what we were told. Whether they were just filming us for it to go on some kind of YouTube fails thing, I don't know. But that was the vibe.
I guess you never know these days where kind of the footage is going to go. That's why we always going to kind of take it back to there's any cameras. But obviously, there's a couple of things I want to talk to you today. Obviously, I know you're probably tired of talking about it, but the Inbetweeners and then your podcast, the MMA Fan Podcast. So start with the MMA Fan Podcast. How did you kind of get started with something like that?
Well, I went. Stu Whiffin, my co-host, has like a million podcasts, and one of them's a music-based podcast where he gets people on to talk about kind of the music that influenced their lives or big moments in their life. And I went on his podcast about that, and we chatted about 40 minutes about music, and somehow towards the end of it got onto MMA. And we stayed on the chat talking for like over an hour about MMA, and we realized we were talking more about MMA than music. And because he's got so many podcasts and it was the pandemic and there was, very little going on, I thought, well, this could be a laugh. I listen to a lot of MMA podcasts. I love MMA. And also one of the main things was, MMA is still a very young sport. It's growing massively, but I think it's still got a long ways to go to kind of reach the levels of popularity that a lot of other sports in this country have. And so because of that, I don't have a lot of mates that I can talk to about MMA to the lengths and in the detail that I'd like to talk to them about it. And Stu was one of those people that I could do that. So I thought, well, even if it's just the two of us chatting and no one really listening, at least I've got someone to talk MMA with. And the podcast just snowballed into this amazing thing where, we've been able to talk to some incredible fighters, and we try to really profile the fighters and get an in-depth chat with them and how they started in MMA, things that drive them, the adversities they've overcome. And some of these fighters, as I'm sure have got really inspiring and amazing stories. And, you have to pinch yourself when you're there talking to the likes of like Alexander Volkanovski, Dan Hardy, Michael Bisping, Tyron Woodley, the list goes on and on. We really have had such incredible athletes on our podcast, and we get to spend a good night, half an hour, 40 minutes chatting to them about their journeys into MMA, which has been great.
Yeah, I've got your thing here. I've just seen Paddy Baddy, Dan Hooker, Arnold Allen, Michael Bisping. There's some half decent names on there. What's that like?
Yeah.
Because I know you're an actor and you're kind of relatively well known. Do you find that a bit easier because you've been speaking to a lot of people over time? You're kind of more used to it rather than a normal person doing a podcast who's got an office job.
I think possibly, yeah. But having said that, I kind of think I'm passionate about it. And whenever someone's coming on the show, I try to do as much research as I can. Again, when it was during the pandemic and there wasn't much work going in, I was able to do more research. At the moment, I'm filming, I'm going to a few things, and so it's harder to find time to get the research in. I've got 2 young kids as well, but I'm passionate about it, so I enjoy doing it. And I think research and preparation is always key for those kind of things. If you do your homework and you listen to other interviews that person's had, and you're looking up their career and watching a few of their fights and stuff like that, the chat can become easy because questions just become obvious. You just sit, as a fan of the sport, you just sit back and go, oh God, why did they do that? Or God, was that the plan all along? Or what was it that drove them into this? Because it's a crazy sport anyway, and I'm really interested in the psychology of the athletes in mixed martial arts. Like, it's such a grueling sport, from the training to the weight cut to the fight itself. There's so many moments where I think these men and women can suffer imposter syndrome, can just think, fuck it, I don't want to do. Am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think the psychology, the mental strength of these people is fascinating. And so the questions for me, because I'm just interested, come quite naturally.
Okay, that's quite good then. Yeah, you don't really want to be not interested in it. Your brain will be kind of thinking the whole time what to ask them next or how to follow it up on. But you've had the chance to speak to quite a few different people on the podcast. Who's been kind of most interesting to talk to? We'll put it that way.
That's a really hard question, because so many people are brilliant in so many different ways. And I know that sounds like a cliched answer, like I'm skipping the question. I'm not. I will give you some names, but I have to give you a few. Dan Hardy, in terms of like just the intelligence level of the man, the way he knows martial arts inside and out. He's so articulate. I could chat to Dan Hardy for ages. Similar thing with Mark Goddard. Mark Goddard, having a ref on the show, is the only ref we've had on. We could have chatted to him for hours just about different aspects of the sport and why fans get certain things wrong and all that kind of stuff, and the level of detail and obviously the pressures that come along with being that man in the middle of the octagon. Oban Elliott was someone that a lot of people may not know. He's a Cage Warriors fighter. He sadly lost his father when he was about 7 years old, and his father was a boxer. And he's kind of gone into MMA, I think, as a sort of homage to his late father. Talking to him was he was very open with us, and I'm always going to be really thankful for that. And it was a fantastic chat with this young man who, still, I think at times openly was talking about struggling with, like, it's not fair that I lost my dad at that age and have gone through what I've gone through. But equally, he was a very funny guy as well. And that kind of marriage of kind of the drama of what he's gone through but with his natural personality of finding things funny and little situations where he was working, I think, and at a school, and we were doing the podcast with him, and he was in this little classroom, and one of the teaching staff came in and knocked on the door and told him to be quiet. It was like a teacher's telling off this man telling him to be quiet. But Oban was like, well, I'm leaving this job tomorrow anyway, so I don't care. I mean, like, stuff like that. It was just funny little situations. And Chris Barnett, who I think is fighting this weekend, if people don't know, Beast Boy Barnett, one of the guys that moves better than anyone else at heavyweight for his weight. He's like 5'10", but a heavyweight, very chunky guy, if you know what I'm talking about. But he knocked out Gian Vellante with like a spinning heel kick or whatever it was. And that he was so positive. What a friendly guy, always smiling, so positive, a great outlook on life. And they're just a few that are off the top of my head. We've had great chats with Molly McCann, Paddy Pimblett, Angela Hill was another great chat. So, yeah, I mean, we've just been really I could go on all day. I really could.
When you talk to these people over Zoom and you kind of get to know them relatively well over that kind of hour or 40 minutes, do you ever have, like, when they're fighting on TV, do you get more into it since you've interviewed them? And if they say you're watching a fight and you just interviewed them, you kind of, oh yeah, come on, we want them to win. But then you say you hadn't interviewed them. Do you feel like more pressure, or do you feel more for them to win?
Definitely when I've interviewed someone, because look, I'm not a journalist. I'm not some person that's paid to be unbiased or anything. If you come on our show and you give us half an hour, 40 minutes of your time, and I get to know you better as a person, not just as an athlete, then I can't help but have a connection with you after that. And so, yeah, so when we have particularly like the Cage Warriors fighters on, who with all due respect to a lot of them, a lot of them I don't know until I start researching and interviewing them and stuff like that. But like people like the Hardwick brothers, I love those guys now. I always want them to win. Matt Bonner, we watched him after interviewing him win the belt. Then he's lost the belt, but then he got another win recently, that. And every time he goes out there, I'm rooting for him to win. So yeah, you do. Every time you interview these guys, especially if you've interviewed their opponent as well. Like we interviewed Arnold Allen and Dan Hooker before their fight at UFC London. Now, before that interview, I was a massive fan of both those guys. I think Dan Hooker is in these incredible wars that will go down in history. He's got to have at least 1 or 2 fights in the UFC Hall of Fame, but within the next few years. And then Arnold Allen, I love his personality. I think he's underrated as a personality within the kind of UFC roster. And so I was really disappointed they fought at all. I wanted them to be kept away from each other because I like rooting for both of them. But we've had them both on, and that was a bit more difficult. But again, as someone that can be completely biased, because I am just a fan, I'm a UK MMA fan. And so if it's, 2 guys I've interviewed and you've got Arnold Allen from Felixstowe and Dan Hooker from New Zealand, I love you, Dan. I wish you all the success in the world, but I want to see Arnold Allen get that belt or fight for a title or any of those things. So I was rooting for Arnold, but, I felt really bad for Dan, and I always want to see Dan do well.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Arnold Allen knocked Dan out in the first round, but have you had Darren Till on? I know you probably have, but have you reached out to him or his management at all? But surely you could get him.
No, do you know what? I think maybe I have a little moments quite regularly of thinking, oh, they're not going to come on. They're too big. I've not reached out to Conor McGregor. I've not reached out to Darren Till and stuff like that. I mean, I've been so amazed at me just dropping Instagram messages to people like Alexander Volkanovski or Dan Hooker and them actually saying yes. That to me has blown my mind. So yeah, but I mean, but funnily enough, maybe I should try and reach out to Darren, because at UFC, I was lucky enough. This shows how well the podcast has done, but we were accredited by the UFC to be part of the media. So I was at UFC London, and honestly, it was like every fan's dream. I was there cage side. Behind me was like Adam Cattrall and Nick Pete, and I was having a chat with them every now and again. And then I've got like Jose Youngs from MMA Fighting just kind of in front of me as well, if you know him. And Pete Carroll as well. And, I'm there cage side, best seats in the house, watching the fights. And then I get to run back to the media room and interview fighters. I mean, I asked Dana White a couple of questions. I mean, it's every fan's absolute dream, isn't it? So yeah, I was loving that. And I've gone off on a tangent now. I can't even remember your question. Oh, Darren. No, so Darren was obviously cornering Tom Aspinall. And when Tom Aspinall came in for his press conference, Darren and the coaching staff walked past me, and he saw me, and I think I could see in his eyes, he was like, "Is that bloke off the Inbetweeners?" And I was like, "All right, Darren," and we shook hands. But he went on because obviously Tom was doing his thing. We didn't have time to chat or anything. But maybe even that makes him go, "Oh, that's interesting." But then I did hear him on Helwani recently, slightly jokingly saying he should be getting paid for all these podcast appearances, and we haven't got the budget for that, Darren. So if you're coming on for free.
No, you should definitely reach out to them. I've DM'd you got to DM everyone. That's the thing. You got to DM, email everyone, because you never know. That's the good thing. That's the exciting thing about it. You never know.
Yeah.
Before a year ago, I'll be able to talk to you. So you never know who you're going to be able to speak to, which is always quite good.
Yeah.
But how often is it that people bring up the Inbetweeners when they see you, like Darren Till did?
Oh no, he didn't bring it up. I'm projecting.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I'm assuming that he went. It depends. Like, I suppose more often than not, if I'm meeting someone for the first time that is a fan of the show. But yeah, it depends. Like I've interviewed plenty of fighters that never bring it up. Like we had a great interview with Ian Gary before he fought Jack Grant for the Cage Warriors title. And we somehow did get onto the whole fish punch scene of the Inbetweeners. And I'd say to anyone, check that out on YouTube. Like we've done a couple of interviews with Ian Gary now, but our first one with him, not only do we talk about the fish punch and we're both laughing a lot, and but also he sings Grease Lightning in the middle of the interview. So that's a good one to check out.
Okay, that's quite good then. Which is the fish punch? When's that? Because I've seen the Inbetweeners, but when is that?
The episode where there's like a field. Again, fans know the show better than I do, because I've only watched every episode like a couple of times as part of like, you know, the screenings of it or whatever. So fans know it better than me. But there's I think it's series 2. There's one where we're on a field trip and we're all in a boat, and a fish gets in the boat, and I have to punch a fish. So yeah.
Oh, I remember that now. Yeah, I remember. That's that. Yeah, that's quite jokes. But how often do you get people kind of coming up to you in the street or say on the train? People just quoting the Inbetweeners, saying lines out of it. How often does that happen? Does that ever get annoying?
Not that often. No. I mean, the worst situations are if people are drunk, then their inhibitions go a bit, and they can be a bit loud. And I can handle that stuff, but I'm not a big fan of people being particularly loud around me and drawing too much attention. I'm not a reality TV star. I'm an actor, and I love acting. If I was an actor that got to do a bunch of different types of roles in theatre, TV, film, all that kind of stuff, and I could pay the mortgage, but no one ever knew who I was, I'd be perfectly happy with that. I'm not interested in fame at all. I'm not a reality TV star. So if someone comes up to me and is really polite and pleasant and wants a photo or whatever, I'll do it. But if someone's being really loud and thinking I'm loving the attention you're giving me, no, I'm not loving the attention you're giving me. I wish you would just be a bit quieter and chill out a little bit, and we can have a pleasant conversation. That's no problem. But as soon as people are drunk and loud and a bit obnoxious, that's when I get a bit turned off by it.
That's quite interesting. You're saying that how if you had done that acting stuff, but you weren't famous at all, that'd been way better, and you still had the same amount of money. Do you think most actors wish that they weren't kind of famous and getting bumped into the whole time in the street?
I think it depends on the individual. I think some individuals really want to be famous, and they say they want to act, and they do that, and they do. They love acting as well, but they really want to be famous. But I think there's a lot of actors out there that think, if I can earn big money and I can do good work, credible work, where people in the industry go, that person's a really good actor, and they're getting lauded for their achievements, but people on the street have no idea who they are. I think a lot of people, especially when you've got a bit older and you can see what the world is like, would probably take that second option.
Do you still keep in contact with the old cast in Inbetweeners? Because I know there's a post that came out a few years ago. I can't remember. It was a few years ago. For you guys all sitting around a table. I think it was at some sort of reunion.
Yeah. I remember that because I think James likes to troll fans, and I think he said we were having a meeting about Series 4, and it went like viral and all over Twitter, and he was just trolling them. But that's James's style. But yeah, like we're in contact every now and again, but it's one of those things where filming a show like that takes about 6 weeks. So you film for 6 weeks and then you go off and do other things. So I think people think because the characters are around each other for years and that you're incredibly close, and we like each other and we get on. And if we're around each other, we have a laugh, but we're not like super close or anything like that.
Okay, that's quite interesting. But how much think is there'll be a third season or a third movie? Do you think there's any chance at all? Oh, sorry, fourth season. Is there any chance at all?
The Inbetweeners finished in 2014. It's really lovely that people keep asking questions about it because they love the show so much. But I have answered that question in pretty much the same way since 2014. It's done.
Does that question ever get annoying? Like, oh, blimey, all that again?
Well, no, I mean, generally, if I was doing like a TV interview where you've got like 3 minutes to promote a show, I will say to them, one Inbetweeners question, and that's it. Because otherwise, you're there to promote whatever show you're doing, and it's overtaken by something that you've got no interest in doing ever again, which isn't fair on the show. Like, you go on these chat shows and stuff, and you're going, oh, I'm here to talk about this show that hundreds of people might have worked on, loads of money's been pumped into, and loads of people are wanting that show to be a success. So if you then go on a show and have to talk about a different show, it's not fair. It's not right to all the people that have worked so hard on the show that you're promoting. And that's why I do that stuff. If someone's out on the street and they want to talk to me about the Inbetweeners, I'll talk to them about it. If I've got time, I've no problem with that. But if you're in a situation where you're promoting one thing and someone's asking you about something else, that's when you start going, guys, I can't keep answering these questions because I'm here to promote a specific thing. And you're taking away from them, and you're taking away from the hard work that writer, director, producer, and all the other actors have put into that job.
That's quite interesting. But then I guess you can't say that live, and you got to say it before, because you say it live when you've got limited time, and it might come off as a little bit off, I guess. So you got to tell them that before. But that must be quite annoying, them just asking you about one thing that's already happened, it's already in the past. But you got this one thing coming up which is really good, kind of really into, you want to promote the hell out of it almost. What else do you have coming up in your future? What do you kind of aim? Awesome.
Well, so I'm filming something at the moment for Sky. Again, a lot of stuff I think it hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say what it is, but I'm filming like a kind of cool comedy drama for Sky. It's a second series of something that's already out there with a cracking cast, and it's written by one of the best young writers out there at the moment. So that's going to be really good, and I think that'll come out around Christmas time, but I'm not exactly sure. But it's really different, and I've got to do a bit of dancing for it. I mean, it's a fictional show. I'm not on like Strictly or anything, but I've actually got to do a fair amount of dancing within the storyline of this TV show. But that's been really, really fun, and that's been really good, and I'm really looking forward to that. Proper filming of that. We're doing rehearsals at the moment. That starts in a couple of weeks, and then I did a period drama a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, and it's taken so long to get the second series going because of everything that's happened with COVID and people's availability due to COVID and all that kind of stuff. And finally, touch wood, it looks like it's going in the summer. So things, hopefully, fingers crossed, if it stays the way it is, I should be busy up until September with a couple of really good projects, one cool comedy thing, one drama. So again, that kind of mixing things up a bit is what I always like to do. I would never want to do the same thing over and over again. That's not what acting is to me. I want to play different characters in different types of shows, and luckily enough, that's what I've been able to do recently.
Okay, that's quite interesting. You say you have to learn a dance. Is that the first skill you'll have to learn, kind of master almost, to be able to play it? Or have you done other skills as well in the past?
Well, no. I mean, to get back onto MMA, probably the first time I entered an MMA gym is because I was cast in this sci-fi kind of comedy drama. And it said martial arts training would be beneficial. So I walked into London Shoot Fighters, East London, not the West London one. I looked into the East London one, which is a bit more chilled. West London is full of like absolute killers, like MVP and stuff like that. I went to the East London one, which is a little bit more chilled. But there was a great trainer there called Pete Ryan. Shout out to him. And so I was learning kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, and that's kind of, I was already a fan of MMA and particularly the UFC. And yeah, so I started training then on and off. But again, with acting, it's so difficult to maintain the training that you need to do to get really, really good at something like that. A job comes in and you don't train for 8 weeks, and then you train for a little bit, and then another job comes in, you don't train for 6 weeks. It is tricky to try and really get a rhythm going with that kind of stuff. But in a way, that's a good thing. If you can get a rhythm going with that kind of stuff, chances are you're not working much, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're unemployed for too long.
Okay, that's really interesting what you're saying there. It's quite funny. You kind of come full circle then. Starting off with the acting, getting into MMA, and then kind of coming back to the acting, and then obviously doing the MMA podcast. But Blake, that's all I've got to ask you. But thanks so much for the time. I'll put the podcast and Instagram in the description. But you got anything else you want to shout out, or we're all good?
No, just if people can check out the MMA Fan Podcast, we do have it on YouTube, but we have the podcast as well. YouTube is generally the fighter interviews that we do, but we've got the podcast where we will preview big cards and do a rundown of the post show on big cards. And I think I've got a lot of people coming my way because I maybe said a couple of things about Gilbert Burns in the preview show that some people didn't like. I'm standing by a lot of them, so. The post-fight show, we're a bit late getting that done because I was at the Olivier's the other night and it's taken me a while to watch the whole card. But yeah, so check out the post-fight show that should be coming your way this week on the podcast. And then, as I say, the back catalogue of interviews we have, they age really, really well. Even if it's something we did 6 months ago, it's not like we're not just talking to fighters about their upcoming fight or the fight that's just gone. We're really trying to profile them as individuals and find out about them and what they go through psychologically and physically. Just in general surrounding this sport. So even if we've interviewed someone 6 months ago, you can go back and listen to that interview or watch that interview and still get a lot from it and understand these athletes a lot more.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess the interview doesn't go out of date because you talk. It's not just focusing a 10-minute interview on that upcoming fight. They've got a weigh-in, press conference, public workouts, and fight. You've got all the kind of history, back catalogue. So yeah, that sounds quite good. I'll put the link to that in the description. Late. Thanks for the time, mate. It's been good.
Thank you very much, mate. All the best.